Hey gang, I'm just going to walk you through the steps of using Google Sheets as an opportunity to provide feedback for students on assessments, and whether it be formative or summative, and how you can use this as a tool for your own grade recording purposes, and also for sharing with your students personal information just on an individual basis of how they've done on either formative or summative assessments that later they can share in their student portfolios, or that they can share with parents or whoever it might be for regular feedback and progress throughout the course. So I'm going to go to Chrome. I'm going to go to just a Google Sheets, and as you can see, I've opened up a brand new one here. And the very first step is when you open up a brand new one is just being able to load the correct information into the Google Sheet. So as you can see here, I've done categories like student name, email, things like visual number, message, fluency, language control. These different categories are used for the Spanish version of it, so you'd have to set yours up according to your course specific subject area, what you really wanted. And once you do this first step, you can use this as a template for later and future templates that you will build for further assessments down the road. So the first step is usually the most work, and then later on you can just copy and paste and borrow templates you previously made and clear the information for brand new templates for future assessments. So the very first thing I've done here is I've uploaded the different categories that I want to make sure that I give information back on. One of the categories that is really important to me is teacher comments that I type while the student is actually taking the assessment. And as I've preloaded this right here, the only other information I would do is now I'd go in and start putting in like student names by like student A, student B, different information that I could use for this. And so if I wanted to give specific students names, then I could do that as well, like Joe um, or Susie, common names. Then the rest of the information beyond email, like visual number, message, fluency, really the criteria I'm going to be grading on is message fluency and language control, and the MYP criterion, just making sure that matches up. So in order to do that, to be able to have this information according to our rubric that we use, and in your specific content area you might have a rubric that you also use, I've preloaded and I'm going to upload the criteria from our rubric into this sheet, and I'm just going to name this really quickly while I'm here, rubric. That way I'm going to pull information later on that I'm going to make in this actual page right here appear from information that I'm using as a template from a kind of a copy paste method I'll show you in just a second. So I'm going to go back to the very original sheet here, and I'm going to go to the criteria here for message and this, and I'm borrowing this from another sheet that I've actually created. So I'll show you what I'm pulling this from. Is one I've previously made. Like I said earlier, you can get all this information here and you can just upload it into copy and paste this, upload this from a previous assessment and have this ready to go to where you just have to copy and paste literally every time if you want to use it again. And so I've copied and pasted this into the new actual feedback form that I'm making here, and I have two pages. Sheet 1 has nothing on it right now. Sheet 2 has all this stuff that I'm using for my rubric, and as you can see, message is going to correspond with message here from sheet 2. Fluency is going to, excuse me, is going to go with fluency, and so forth and so on for my different columns that I'm giving feedback for. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to click on an empty cell right below, right below message. This is one of my grading categories that I have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to up to the tools. Right next to tools, I have data, and I'm going to go to what's called data validation. I'm going to click on data validation, and this is going to come up. And then what I'm going to do is you'll see this box is going to appear right here for me. And I'm going to go ahead and go down to my separate sheet where it says rubric. I'm going to click right here. And this is for the message category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this, all these columns that I have right here. I can move this out of the way. B, C, D, and E are all the criteria that I have for message and how I would grade. Exemplary, proficient, approaching, and does not meet standard. So I want these to appear in a drop down on my next page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply click in this box right here, list from range. Right next to that I have this empty box, and I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy these 4 cells, B, C, D, and E. I do not need to do message again because I've already preloaded message into page 1 as a category. Then I'm going to hit OK after I've highlighted B, C, D, and E. And once I've done that, I'm going to go to Save. And when I come back here, I now notice a drop-down arrow that has appeared for message. And if I click on this, you're going to see that I have the different grading criteria uploaded for this column. And if you notice, it's only appearing in this box right now. I don't have one for this box, the box below it, or any of the other cells. So for message, this is where I copied the information from my sheet 2, located down at the bottom. If I go back to sheet 1, and I want this to appear in the following cells underneath message for Susie, Joe, I want to give them feedback on this. All I need to do is I need to click on the cell. You'll see a little blue box, and my cursor, my arrow now changes to a plus symbol. Looks like the inside of a rifle scope. And I'm just going to pull this down to my last student, being Susie. And now I've copied the same formula to appear for all my students. So if I go to Joe, I'll see the same criteria that's there in order to grade Joe on his message for Spanish as I would for Susie. And so as they're taking the exam, I'd say that, oh, Susie, you've displayed exemplary traits for this category. And then my next category is fluency up here. Notice I do not have an arrow like I do right here for a drop down. So what I need to do is I go back to rubric and, I go to data from sheet 1. One more time, I'm going to click on data validation, and this box appears. And this box will appear and stay with me to this next page. I can kind of move it out of the way. Then, one more time, I'm going to click in this little box where it's lists from range and the data validation box that followed me from the previous page. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm on the right category. I wanted to talk about fluency and grade them on this. So I'm going to highlight these 4 columns, B, C, D, and E. And notice that the formula that's listed here says from B2 to E2, which is correct. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. I'm going to go ahead and press Save. And then I go back to my original grading sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to now see this arrow pop up. And this now gives me, for fluency, my grading criteria for this, just like it did for message. And if I want to make sure that I copy the same formula down, all the way down to my student Susie, I just do this, look for the blue little tiny box, the square, and then the crosshair should come up if I go on it. And when you pull it down, it will just copy that same formula to the previous and the preceding cells. Language control is my next category. You get to determine what your categories are going to be, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to data validation, up to the data tab, hit data validation, go back to my rubric because this is where I'm pulling the information from. And I have my next category and that's language control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to list from range once again because this is my criteria for language control, these 4 boxes, and I'm going to hit OK. So, and then save, go back to sheet 1, and now I have that arrow that appears down for my Dropbox once again that I can grade the students by. You can do this for all your columns, but really the couple steps that you just need to make sure is click on data and then always go down to data validation before you go to your next tab where you pull your information from. Once I've done that, I'm going to have this information that's going to appear, and I'll use the Susie student as my example. And if you still see that this is cut off, you want your information to appear to where it's not a huge box, I can just go up here to the text wrapping for this box and do this to where it all fits in there nice and neat. Same thing for here. I can go to the entire column, I can do text wrapping and make sure that this is going to feeling nice and neat when I go here. So Susie, my student, has done a 7 to 6 on message and fluency. She scored in between a 5 or a 4. Language control would be the same thing. And then finally, what I have here is teacher comments. And teacher comments, you did a great job on your overall fluency, but you did have some breakdown in your overall use of the correct verbs. That's just some examples. Your feedback's going to differ once again. And notice the text is going off the page here. So I just want to go to your text wrapping, and I want to wrap the text to make sure that it is in the correct column. Then I'd give them their score, their mark. If they got a 7, then I'd put that there. Then on the email, if I had an email address, I would be able to type in their email, and in a separate one, a video, I'll show you how to do and make use of yet another mail merge so you don't have to send 20 different emails, and that takes a lot of time. But this is basically the steps in order to be able to set up your feedback. And then here in a second on my next video, I'll show you how to email that feedback to every student that's personalized just for them, and that will give them opportunity to have information that is going to help them and their future growth, hopefully, in those specific areas in which you're assessing. Hope this video has helped. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or follow up with me in person. Thanks a lot.